With the car still on the ground, I'm going to break the lug nuts free. And make sure you have the key to your anti-theft lug nut if you happen to have that. Okay, I'm just going to break each of these a quarter of a turn loose. Now that they're loose, I'm going to lift the car up. I'm going to lift here on the subframe connector. That's this black bar that's coming through here. I'm going to lift here so I can put a jack stand in front of it, and I'll leave the jack under it anyway just as a extra precaution. Make sure the parking brake is up and make sure the car is in gear. Okay, lift the car and lower it so that the valley of the jack is now over the frame of the car that's coming through there. Now I'm going to remove the rest of the lug nuts. If you have a hand drill, this really makes it a lot easier. Now remove the wheel. The first thing you want to do is find this pin again that's going through there, and on the back side you want to find the clip. Okay, just pull that clip out and give the back side of this just a little bit of a tap. Then we're just going to pull this pin out, pushing from the back side. There it goes. There we go. With that pin out of the way, you'll now be able to lift this caliper off with the brake pads in it. Okay, you can just kind of tip it over and leave it right there. We'll leave the bracket on here, just how it is. Okay, so now these just push out. You just push directly on the insides of these, and these will pop right out. We're going to leave this other one in right now because we're going to use a brake tool to push against it, and it's going to beat this up a little bit, so we'll use the old pad. We'll just leave it in there, but we'll take this one out for now just by pushing in this direction. Okay, so I just I pinched that out with a my breaker bar, the end of the breaker bar, and it just comes out. So now we'll put the tool in here. That'll spread the caliper back out because it's come together over time. And we have the lid off the reservoir here. Okay, so here's how the brake tool works. It has two pieces. You'll take this part and put it inside one of these holes. Then you'll take this part and then screw it into this. Okay, so as you screw it in, the plate part of it here will come against here, and then the thread that we're threading in will push against the old brake pad, and it's going to mess up the old brake pad, so that's why we left the old one in here. And the reason why we're doing this is to compress the pistons. On this car there's two, it's a dual piston, so we're doing them one side at a time. Other cars sometimes just have the one. So anyways, we twist this, you'll see that second piston start to collapse. Okay, so that's what's pushing that back in. So we'll just do one side and then the other. So now the other side's been compressed as well. Something to know is that as the brakes squeeze the rotor, over time they wear down, so it takes more fluid from coming from there to tighten that gap. So now that we're spreading it back out, you'll see that the reservoir is pretty much overflowing, and the reason for that is because maybe you went in for a checkup, or you noticed the level was low since the brakes were worn down, and so you added some. So a quick way that I found to fix this is I just get a bottle here, get a little sprayer, stick that in there, and then spray it into the bottle. That way you don't have to mop all this up with a rag. So as you can see, I lowered the level by spraying it into this bottle. Don't drain it too much because you don't want air to get in the system, so you don't want that level to fall too far. So just spray just enough to keep it from overflowing. Keep checking on it. Okay, so now you can see the two marks that it put in here using that tool, so that's why we left the old one in there. This old one will now also pop out, and it's good to have these holes here because it'll help you reference which pads when you're putting the new ones in, because sometimes it's easy to forget which way they went. So you just pop it out by pulling on the back side of it, and we will have to be transferring these clips over to the other brake pads. A few whacks from the back side right here with my breaker bar, and this came right out. Just comparing the old and the new together, you can see this is where we dug in with the tool, so we know that this is the side that's going in kind of closest to the inside of the car, and we're going to just pull these clips off here with pliers and move them over to there. So I just pulled this clip off of the old one, and now I'm just sliding it right over that hole onto this new one. It just clips right into place. And we'll just do the same thing on this side for the other one. Okay, so the clip is now on that side as well. So that's how that clip goes on. That's how that clip goes on. I'm just going to smear some grease on the back side of these. Not where these clips are, but just kind of in the middle here. I'm just going to put these clips into those holes and push it in. Once it's into place, I just kind of put some paper over here and push on it so we don't get that dirty. And now I'll just be pushing this other one back into its place. And once again, just put some paper on it so you're not getting it dirty, and then just push that pad into its place. At this point, you could just pull the bracket off if you were going to be taking the rotor too. Next, we're going to remove the caliper here, and to do that, there's two bolts on the back side. So one of them's right here, and the second one is down below right here. So we have a 15mm socket that we're going to put on here. We're going to break these off, and remember, you're facing the opposite direction, so don't get confused between tightening it and loosening it. Now I'm going to be lifting upward in order to break this loose. I have a breaker bar on there, but I also have my jack handle here off of one of my jacks, and so if it's on too stubborn, you can slide this over the end of your wrench there, and it gives you a little bit extra torque. So for the bottom one, you're going to be pulling upward on it, and the same with this top one. So once again, you're going to be going that way, and they'll break right loose. Don't get confused, because it is easy to be pushing the wrong way. Once you've removed the two bolts in the back, you can slide the caliper off of the rotor, and then get a bucket or something nearby so that you can rest these down. You don't ever want this to be hanging by the brake lines. It's bad for it. So you can just slide this off. Get it here. And just make sure it's not hanging. Some people tie them up with like coat hangers or wire, and you can do that if you want. Now there's nothing that's holding the rotor on except for from the factory. Sometimes there's a little metal clip here that you have to take off first, but otherwise you just take the rotor off as if you were going to be taking the wheel off. It's kind of the same thing. If you're using your same rotors, go have them turned at a machine shop. That'll resurface the finish on the front and make them smooth. Now slide the caliper back onto place, and we'll be hooking it in the top and the opposite of how it came in. And then we'll push it down on the bottom. And that leaves us with our little hole right here where we're gonna put our pin back through. Just make sure that everything locked into place up front, and that's really the easiest way to do it. So now I'm just sliding this pin back through. Okay, give it a few taps. Okay, now we'll just put that retaining clip in the back. Now we're just sliding that clip right back over it. Give it a few pounds. Okay, so that clip is now back in the spot. And we're ready to put the wheel back on. Lift the car and pull out the jack stand. Make sure there's nothing under the car. Slowly let it down. Okay, so make sure that when you put these lug nuts back on that you start them for quite a few threads. You don't want to cross thread anything. And just make sure you go in the star pattern as you tighten these down. I'm just going loose on this with the electric impact, then I'll torque them down with my torque wrench. Okay, with the car level, check your fluid level. As you can see, we're still a little bit above our max line, so we're going to siphon a little bit more. However, then we're going to drive the car around and make sure that that level hasn't really dropped. So don't take too much out of it, and then just make sure that the fluid level at no time drops down to where air starts getting into the system. Our level is pretty close to the fill line. It's a little above, and that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and put the cap back on and wash my hands, start the car up, and pump the brakes a few times. Okay, so now we're going to get in and start the car. Since I've cleaned my hands, all clean, and we're going to pump the brakes a few times. Now we're going to check the level here. And we're looking pretty good. So just add fluid and make sure it doesn't get too low. Sure. I'm going to drive it around the block for a little while and test it out again.